All right, I'm back. It is like early evening. I have a plan. I have even more than a plan. I may even have a title. Definitely don't have a hook. But I will say I have a video on my YouTube channel that is called "From Vegan Burger to International uh, Massage Championship," which has so far has the most number of views. Not like an extreme amount, but more than anything I've had so far. So I suppose maybe just saying from one strange thing to another might be a hook. I don't know. But if that's the case, it's going to be from my grocery cart to probably a Depression era recipe. I don't know if that's a hook or not, but that's what we're doing today. One of the things that I've always been careful of is kind of putting my life out there for people to have opinions, judgments, thoughts about, because one, I don't think I'm that interesting of a person, and two, I just inviting people in to have judgment just doesn't seem, fun or whatever. But in the space of being someone who's helping people make food decisions, I think it's important to share some of the ways that I go about doing it, things that I've figured out, things that I have not figured out, and to be honest about, where I come from and the approach that is taken, especially as a person who is an obese woman telling people about different foods and food groups and approaches to eating. So I wanted to have some transparency. So the last time I went to the grocery store, I took a picture of my cart. And I want to also have full transparency that before I went to the grocery store, I ate at Shake Shack. So that adds another level of transparency. And I'll talk about it a little bit when I go through the cart, but I think that every food decision counts. And that's one of the reasons I do work with people the way that I do, because I think it's easy to take like a moment in time, a snapshot of what's happening in that moment and make assumptions about what's going on, all the time. That's why the work I do is very data focused, not to lay blame, but to absolutely know what we're working with. And it is interesting because it was quite lovely when I was going through the checkout line. The woman who was bagging my groceries said, "You're eating healthy," and she said, "You deserve that." And I was like, that is one of the loveliest things someone has said to me in a grocery store. And it was quite lovely, but I also knew that I didn't just have a burger and fries. But even with that, it doesn't even matter, because it's true in that moment, and I will be eating those greens, which we'll be talking about in a little bit. Um, it isn't all in one moment. The burger doesn't kill the greens that are in the basket, right? Every step towards the right direction is a help. Every step that goes the opposite direction is an opportunity to reevaluate. Um, Point being, like, I could go to Shake Shack and then I could fill my car with a whole bunch of other stuff. And so it's really about recognizing there are lots of independent decisions that are building up to make what's going to happen, and there are lots of opportunities to do the right thing, whatever that right thing is for you. So let's get to the cart, and I'm going to talk about grocery shopping a little bit, and then I'm going to talk about greens, and then I'm going to talk about a recipe. All right. So this was my grocery cart yesterday. I try, for lots of reasons. One, I am a small business owner and I don't have extra money laying around. Everything I try to invest in my business and invest in myself, and I'm not in a space where I'm flush with extra cash. So when I grocery shop, I am always looking for bargains. I legit, let's talk about that. Let's talk about coupons. Let's talk about the coupons that Smith sends me, because it's one of the things that bothers me. Because coupons are now customized. I grew up at a time where you would buy the Sunday paper and you would go through the coupons, and the shopping papers, the sales papers, and that would make the decision, even when I was a kid, but when I was in college as well, you could make a decision on where you would do your grocery shopping that week based on the sales papers and the coupons. And that's when there was a lot more competition than what we have now in our food system, in our grocery system. And that competition allowed you to actually get some really good prices, because the stuff that you liked might be on sale at this grocery store. You go there and then you can, get a decent price. Smith's, of course there are different grocery stores. There are not that many of them. But they do try and entice you with coupons and stuff. And all the coupons they send me are things that I have bought before. And sadly, I should do this exercise at some point. Most of the coupons they send me are not for nutrient-rich foods. They're usually the enticing type foods. Like, this is a coupon for chocolate, White Castle burgers, and I will talk about that in a second. This is a coupon that's really interesting. This is the first time I've seen this coupon. Let me go through the other ones first. This is a good coupon because it's $1.50 off, canned nuts. Nuts are really expensive and have a lot of nutrients in it. And usually that's a purchase that is too expensive for me to purchase. But with the coupon, I could, and I got a great mixed nuts. It had macadamia nuts in it, pecans. What else? I say pecans, pecans. Pecans, macadamia nuts, pecans, cashews, like all the expensive rich people nuts. And so that was a delight. And then I often have applesauce, because they have a non-sugar applesauce. So they send me a coupon for that oftentimes. But this is the first time I had a coupon, which I was excited for. This save $2 when you spend $10 on more items in the frozen department, which sounds great because they have frozen fruits and vegetables and da-da-da. But they are very explicit to say no ice cream, which I think is fair, but anything organic or natural, you can't save money on. Frozen meat and seafood, things that people actually need and could be helpful, you can't save money on. And so I get a little frustrated. And I get that supermarkets do have historically low margins, but I still think they could do better. I know they could do better. The White Castle burgers is really a nod to my dad. I talk about this a lot, how I eat nostalgically sometimes. Like, I like having foods that remind me of times in my life. And one of the main things that my dad used to do when we went to Detroit for the summers was take us to White Castle. It was a whole ritual thing. And a frozen White Castle burger is not the same as going to White Castle and getting that greasy bag of White Castle, or sitting in those. Oh yeah, it's a whole vibe. Like, I've been to White Castle in other cities, but for some reason it only makes sense to me in Detroit. Like, and just like it just only makes sense to me there. But it is, it's a familiar experience that takes me back. And I know for a fact that I'm not alone in eating nostalgically. So here's my basket of stuff that came out to be, with the coupons, I did pretty good with the coupons, less than $50, which is not easy to do the way that food prices are. I don't eat a lot of meat these days, so there isn't any in this. I eat more seafood than meat, but I already had some seafood. And I try to limit the processed foods, because one, it's cheaper, and two, it depends, but it's not, you don't get as many nutrients. I'm a sucker for a good tortilla chip for sure. And I appreciate my dark chocolate for sure. Um, so the greens, they had a lot of greens this time. Normally I buy my greens already in a bag pre-washed. But this time I went, and it seems, I don't remember seeing these before. They had mustard greens, which are often hard to find, and these looked fantastic. They had collard greens, in the bunch, and these were like $1.50 per bunch with a reasonable sized bunch. It's something's going on there. And they had dandelion greens. So here's all the greens over here. And I got some green onions, which were also on sale. So those collards are huge and big and they look healthy. And then these right here are the dandelion greens. And then I guess the mustards, maybe they're not there. You can see the mustards better in the other paper. They have like this feathery. Mustards are really, really good. I like those a lot. Um, so I got all these greens, which is great. I'm excited about it, but I have never cooked dandelion greens, so I wanted to look at that. I could talk about the rest of the stuff in the cart, but I suspect that it's going to be boring. But I will say, I am a snob. I'm definitely a water snob. I don't buy Evian all the time, but it was super on sale. It was like $5 off, so I got the case of Evian. But yeah, it does make my cart look a little different. All right. So with that, yeah, and I'm not afraid of a store brand. If I usually will try it out once, and if I like it, I'll stick with it if it's cheaper. Okay, so that's my cart and my transparency. And again, I don't know if anyone's listening to this or not, but as I've been thinking, I've had a little more time to think about my content strategy, and I think what's going to happen is these episodes of me rambling for a long time will become more like segments and something that's more packaged and polished. I can easily imagine a segment that speaks to grocery carts because when I first started doing this work, that was like one of my main ways to get data is I just hopefully not creepily look in people's carts, and you can learn so much about people, so much by what's in their grocery carts. I don't take pictures or anything. I have gone up and asked people sometimes, like, why did you pick that, or where can I find that, or but I definitely when I'm in the grocery store, especially if I shop at like a Walmart, I'm looking at carts. I'm making assessments of the carts, because sometimes you can look in a cart and you're like, there's not a meal in that cart. There's a lot of food, things that people call food. There are a lot of products in your cart, but there's no meals in that cart. And then sometimes you get like things where you get meals, but you know that what they call the struggle meals. You see the struggle meals and how people are putting together different things to get that comfort in without spending a lot of money. You see the cart that's just fucking ramen. I see that more than, I mean, that's a whole thing. You see the cart that, is really working hard to be good, but they got 3 kids and somehow the flaming Cheetos make it in, and all these other really kid-like items make it in there. So yeah, I'm definitely one to look inside a cart. So I thought it was only fair that I show mine at least for this week. Okay, that's the cart. So my main issue was trying to figure out like how am I gonna cook these dandelion greens. I have had dandelion greens before, and in the last video I talked about the sweat lodge. That's the last time I actually had them, was during a sweat lodge where the woman who was preparing all the meals was also, I guess, a medicine. They had a different name for her. It's like caretaker or something like this. For me, I would call her a medicine woman, but her specialty was making medicine with food and things like that. And so dandelion salad was one of the things she served, and I asked her about it because it tasted really good, and I just didn't recognize the green. And she's like, yeah, I picked those dandelions this morning. She was like, they grow, where she was, because I think it wasn't a reservation. I don't know where it was. I believe it was, sacred land or land specifically for growing, these types of medicine less land. I'm not sure. But she said she had picked them this morning, and one of the keys is to pick them when they're young and tender. And so I'm going to just shift to one of my favorite, I got a lot of favorite stuff I watch on the internet. As people can see when I watch the International Massage Competition. This is one of my favorite channels. Great Depression Cooking with Clara. I love this channel, and so I'm gonna watch this video and like say some things about this video, and it made sense to me to go because I was trying to figure out what to do with these dandelion leaves, and of course Clara has a recipe for dandelion salad, and I feel like I want to watch and narrate this. And again, I'm not at the point where I'm thinking about what other people whether this is entertaining or not, or whether people want to watch it or not. I'm more of the place of like, okay, if you want to come along with me, this is cool. This is where I'm going, so if you want to go with me, let's go. I'm a big fan of Clara. Sadly, I looked it up, she passed away in 2013 at the age of 98, which would make her early 90s here. And she's one of my favorites because she does actually cook some pretty decent food, considering it's Depression era food. And she tells a great story, and she has a great story. So this is, we're going to learn about dandelion salad, and I'm going to just talk about some things as we go along. One thing I'll say about the dandelions I have, like the woman I talked to about her recipe, she's like, you should get them young, they're less bitter, and you want to make sure there are no pesticides or whatever. The ones I have are extremely mature. They're big, they're long, they've been growing for a while. They are so bitter. They're super bitter. I tried them last night, and I'm like, I gotta figure out what to do with these. And when I was washing the greens, so like I said, I usually buy bagged greens or like pre-prepared salad stuff. Not always, but sometimes. The greens that I bought, like when I wash greens, my grandmother taught me how to straight up like really wash greens and like prepare them. It's like a whole day long process to do it the way she would do it. But one of the things she would say is like when you wash greens, and if nothing has, like if they're completely whole leaves and all of them are completely, you have to ask the question, like, are they any good? Because she's like, some kind of insect should want to eat the food that you're eating. And it's like these greens are pristine. There are no holes, there's no browning, there's no nothing on them. There's no dirt on them. It doesn't even look like dirt has ever touched them. I mean, they're so seemingly, for lack of a better term, processed. And so I'm imagining, I don't know, but I should do some research on the farms that they're coming from, because it seems like they are, I don't know if they're GMOs. I'm pretty sure a lot of the food now has pesticides on it, so I'm really washing pesticides off instead of the actual pests. And they taste a little different than what I'm used to, but I think it's because they're older, and I also think it's pretty likely they're GMO because they look so beautiful. They're so big. They just don't look supernatural, or they look supernatural. But I don't have any proof to say that. I should do a little more. And they weren't listed as organic. And there's a whole organic discussion too. I'm going to look that up. I'm not going to speak on it until I understand and know the facts of it. But the characterization, the label of organic is changing. The FDA is trying to change it all the time, and under the Trump administration, there just seems to be a willingness to be lenient in the way that really benefits industry, as opposed to health. So I'm gonna do a little bit more research on it and maybe speak on it. But let's take a moment and enjoy Clara. She's one of my favorites.
Welcome to my kitchen. I'm Clara. I'm 94 years old. Today we are making some meals from the Depression.
So on her channel, she just talks about like her life and her family. She's gonna tell a nice story in this one. She tells stories in most of them. But what I like is that she's 94 and she's still, doing it, and that she's passed on, but
Welcome back. Now we're going to pick some dandelion out in the backyard. It's a good meal to have during the Depression because it's free and it's good for you. I dig them out. Then after I get them all in the house and I clean them up. Cut them out with a knife. Oh good, there's a nice one there. The good one looks like a nice flower. Nothing is broken. Take out the roots and keep the leaves. The dead leaves you throw out, the good leaves you keep. Cut out the dandelion. Then you bring them in and clean them up, get them ready for salad or cooking or whatever you're going to do. I think we got enough. This is how I clean the dandelion. Take out all the dead ones out. You take out the flower. You don't eat the flower, take that out. Take out all the bad ones. When I worked at the Hostess Bakery, I put a knife in my purse. So on the way home from work, I pick dandelion, bring them home to my mother. We ate a lot of dandelion. They're very good for you too. They're cheap. You get them for nothing. All you need is a little patience and work.
Her dandelions are so small and tender, and mine are just like these huge leaves. And I just want to, every time I think about this, especially dandelion, like Monsanto's went after dandelions like they were the devil. Like every commercial was about eradicating weeds, and a weed was the dandelion. And it just seems odd that the thing that they went over to just like eradicate, like it was like killing people or something, is something that actually allowed her family to survive during a really difficult time. I sit with that a lot, and now I think I paid $1.79 for my dandelions that are overgrown and extremely bitter, and they should be free.
It takes quite a while to clean them. You have to have patience. It takes a while to do everything, but the outcome is pretty good. So first you clean them like I'm cleaning them now. Take out all the bad ones. Then you wash them very, very good because they're full of dirt.
Yeah, our food's not full of dirt anymore, for better or worse. So yeah, here she is washing them. I washed mine last night, and I'm like, I barely could find any dirt. She has to wash hers several times. When my grandmother used to wash greens, and like, my grandmother used to cook for, I mean, at minimum 8 people every day. Usually she was cooking for around 15. Like my grandmother was in Detroit, and she was kind of like the mother on the street. So like if you came from a home where food may not be so readily available, she had some for you. And so she was, not to suggest that, the family was wealthy or not, but my grandmother absolutely knew how to make a lot out of very little. And she absolutely knew how to make sure people felt like they got what they needed. And so, she would say stuff like that to me. Like I would be cutting greens and I would throw certain stems away and stuff like that. And she's like, that's food. Like, because she came from, she's from that generation where, when you're feeding a house of 7 people or 5 people or even 2 people, but there's not a lot and you're living off your garden, there's such a connection with raising food. It comes at a cost, like, and it has value, so you can't just be throwing stuff away like it doesn't mean anything, or things that look like waste that are not. You better use them. So she would teach me, like, we would go to the grocery store / farmer market. Like, this is in Michigan, so Michigan had a lot of great farms, a lot of really great food. I grew up in Arizona where I didn't really like fruits and vegetables because when I grew up, there wasn't a lot of shipping. They weren't doing a lot of, like, let's grow stuff in Mexico and bring it to America. Like, we ate seasonally, and there just wasn't a lot of fruits and vegetables in Arizona, so the stuff we got generally was old. It didn't taste good, and you couldn't get everything in season. So when you go, like when we went and spent summers in Detroit, and I would go to these markets, I'd see things that and also Detroit was way more diverse. Tucson was also diverse, but in a different way. But in Michigan, it was you had Polish, you had Jewish sections, you had African Americans, you had people from all kinds of different Eastern, different European backgrounds, and so there was a lot of different food. And the fruits and they just tasted so much better. But, like, my grandmother would task me with picking green beans, and I would pick them, and I just, like, because I'm young, I'm like 7, 8, and basically what I do is, like, just get a handful, my little 8-year-old self, putting it in the bag, and she's like, you better inspect every one of those beans. I am not paying for anything that's not edible, that someone doesn't want to eat. So you better look to see if they have spots. You better look. And she was fast, but anything that she purchased and paid for, it had value. And she made sure that was the case. And we live in such a different time where, we think everything's, maybe not everything, but a lot of things are disposable. And we rarely pay attention to the energy, the time, the resources required to create whatever we have in our hand, a la Amazon world that we live in. But my grandmother definitely instilled in me very early on that, time and energy has value to it, and don't waste it.
That's a pretty one. That's a pretty good bite. Clean up all the dirt, throw it in the garbage. Then put it in here and soak it in water for a while, take all the dirt out of it. Now they're all clean, ready to get washed and cooked.
So, like, she's washing them for a while. I remember my grandmother having several, like, big basins. Like, she'll have the kitchen sink going, and then she'd have a couple basins going too, especially if it was a holiday that she was preparing for. And she was such the quintessential project manager, because my grandfather was a rather demanding individual, and dinner needed to, be a certain way, and everything's got to be hot at the same time, and there were a lot of things that were required, and my grandmother had to, by herself, basically cater on a pretty regular basis. It was amazing to watch, and I think women of that time really don't get the credit for how difficult it was and how much labor was spent just literally keeping people alive, but keeping them fed and keeping them safe. It's so important. So this is the recipe I'm going to try. Hers is very simple. It's lemon juice.
Now I put it in the olive oil.
Olive oil. I have lemon juice. I'll probably use avocado oil instead of olive oil. I have some fresh lemons
I have to put a little salt.
and a little bit of salt. That's it.
I know I never put pepper in salad. Some people do, but I don't. Then you stir it. This is better to mix with your hands. And that's just what I'm going to do now.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna have to.
Wash your hands and hands to stir.
I'm probably gonna have to like massage because they're not tender. I'm gonna cook half of them and then I'm gonna eat half or try to eat half of them raw because they're bitter. It's gonna be a thing. But I may massage them with some salt. Sometimes that will break down and get them to be a little more tender. And then this is one of the things about. Oh, I think I missed the story about the quail. Well, if you watch it, there's a story about a quail that they ate. Someone shot a quail and it ended up in their backyard, and the father was like, "Yeah, it's on my property. It's gonna be ours. We're gonna go ahead." And she talked about how good that quail is. But let me just find the picture of her family. Like, if you've seen a quail not that big. Yeah, I can't find the picture. But they're like 7 people sitting at that family. And I think people forget how much work, how many people are involved. I had a situation when I was in West Africa where, yeah, if you have one chicken and you're feeding 8 people, it's very different than, stopping through in a KFC. It's just such a different experience. So, yeah, this is her family. And so I should let her tell the story because it's really her story to tell. Let me see if I can get this too.
Once we had quail. It felt, leave it there for a while, soak all the dirt out of it, then we'll wash it real good. Sometimes the Lord thinks of you. He drops food from heaven. Sometimes you catch a break in the depression. And once we had quail. It fell, somebody must have shot it, and it fell in our yard. So we didn't know who it belonged to. Nobody came for it. I said, what are we going to do with it? My dad says, it fell in my yard, it's my property. So my mother cooked it. It was very good.
So yeah, I guess thinking about the depression could be depressing, but I think because I spent, anytime I went to Detroit and got a chance to really spend time with my grandmother, I didn't ask her about the depression that much, but she just taught me about, the importance of the art of that kind of survival. And so I don't know, because we're in very interesting times where it would definitely be a benefit to have a garden and have additional sources of food, because our food, there's some weird things going on with it. And then you change food subsidies, you remove low-cost labor in the form of immigrants who work here part-time, and you change the food system. It's really, there's a lot of uncertainty. And so, it does bring me, and maybe I'm strange in this way, but it brings me a little comfort to think that America has a history of people who know what it's like to survive when food seems scarce, or when you have to kind of change the way that you get what you need. But Clara is just like, she's such a sweet lady. So if you watch and listen to her stories, she reminds you that even in tough times, really good, joyful things can happen. And I think that's probably one of the most important things to remember when really crappy shit is happening. All right, on that note, that sounds depressing. But she just has a lot of joy and she takes a lot of pride in her cooking. And I believe this was a project she did with her grandson, who I feel like I saw an interview with, and he seemed quite lovely as well. So yeah, if you have an extra time or you want to learn a new recipe, they got creative. They definitely got creative in the Great Depression time. Um, consider checking out our channel. All right, that's what I've got to say for today. I've got some other things that I've got to get done.